this computer. Hello, Kyla. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm very happy to meet you, and thank you so much for doing this, for taking the time to do this for WiCCD. We know that you're a WiCCD member and you're very supportive of WiCCD, and so we're very happy to get to know a bit more about you and about your practice. So I'm going to start with the first question that we ask on these series, and it's, what is your niche, Kyla?
Driving law. I like to take credit for coining that term. A lot of people in my area, like in British Columbia, are using it now to describe like a practice that focuses primarily on driving offenses. But I think the first time it was ever sort of used to express an area of law was in 2015, 2014, I can't remember, around there when I started my podcast called Driving Law. Yeah, so anything that you can do wrong in a car, I will defend you, is my niche.
And do you do it only from the criminal aspect, or do you also take on provincial cases as well?
Yeah, so I do provincial traffic offenses. I do BC, we have the 90-day roadside prohibition scheme for alcohol impaired driving. So I deal with a lot of those, judicial reviews of those in BC Supreme Court. And then of course the criminal impaired driving, prohibited driving, dangerous driving charges.
Nice. How long have you been doing driving law?
As a dedicated area, probably about 6 years, I think. It's hard to remember. The last couple of years, no blur. But I've been sort of focused on driving offenses since the beginning of my career. I got hired at a law firm that dealt with primarily driving related offenses. And when the law changed in 2020 or 2010 to bring in the roadside prohibition scheme, it just ended up, we slowly transitioned into exclusively doing that. So.
Okay, so in your case, it happened early on in your career that you got into it. Okay,
yeah.
But back then you weren't exclusively doing driving law?
No, I used to do things like spousal assaults and theft under. I did some drug trials, and every time I would find myself sitting there going, I'm incredibly bored. There's nothing like that excites me about this. I mean, I know it's exciting for other people, but for me, it's not. And I just I'm not happy. So I decided, made the decision one day, I'm just not going to do the types of files that don't interest me any longer. And I'm lucky to be in that position.
Right. Okay. So basically then in your case, it was a choice, right? Like you made the decision that you wanted to practice exclusively in driving law? Yes. Okay. And was it difficult at the beginning to make that decision?
No, it wasn't. You know, I'm very lucky at my firm. I mean, I'm basically in charge, so I get to decide what I do and what I don't do. So that makes it a lot easier because I can delegate to the other associates the type of work that I'm not willing to take on, like all of the other criminal law work that comes in the door, which there's plenty of. And it also empowers them to develop their own niches and to develop their own specializations within an area. And they feel more confident too, because they get a better level of knowledge rather than being a generalist about specific types of things. And that, I think, it helps them better serve the client by better making submissions and selling things to the Crown and all of that.
Okay, so do I get here then that in your firm, not everybody is specialized in driving law?
No.
The firm does take on other types of cases. Yes,
so we have a civil, sort of a civil side to the firm, although that mostly is driving cases. Okay. It's, you know, some light PI arising out of motor vehicle accidents, but mostly ICBC. That's our provincial regulated insurer. ICBC breach investigations arising from cases where people were charged with criminal driving offenses, so they dovetail quite nicely. But then we also have like a general criminal practice. The only criminal stuff that we would turn down would be murder. Okay. And Kyla, I wanted to ask you, what type
cases other than driving law would merge well with driving? Like if someone wants to do, let's say it's difficult for them at the beginning to focus exclusively on driving law and they want to take some other types of cases, but that could still work well with that. What other areas do you think
I think
would work?
Drug files probably the most, and there's two reasons for that. The first is that drug files often are going to engage a lot of similar charter issues where you have stops and searches, and and a lot of people that are trafficking drugs are doing it using their cars. So, knowing about the validity of traffic stops and challenging sort of that aspect of it, that can help. A lot of the drug files I did arose out of traffic stops, so it kind of came to me via a driving lens. But then I think the other reason is that there's a whole unexplored area of science in drug files. And with impaired driving, one of the things that I've found makes me an effective advocate, but also sets me apart from other people who do have a generalist criminal practice, is I've done a lot of research and work on the science of impaired driving. And like, how do you analyze a blood sample, what goes in, what can go wrong? But the same analysis methods using a gas chromatography or liquid chromatography that are used to test a blood sample or urine sample for drugs or alcohol are also used to determine whether a substance is a drug. And I've actually developed case law in BC back when I did drug cases that dealt with the disclosure requirements for lab records when samples are analyzed. And I don't think I would have thought to make that argument if I didn't know what I knew from the impaired driving stuff.
And I just want to clarify here, when you say drug cases, it's not impaired by drugs, right? Like you mean the drug, the trafficking and possession. Okay, but you do the impaired by drugs, right? Like the DRE cases. Okay,
definitely.
All right. So, but here's the thing, though. I know that for a lot of people, especially if they're new lawyers, those types of cases can be very technical and scary. So what advice do you have for people who want to get into this area, but they find it a bit technical and maybe difficult at times?
Lots of great pieces of advice. Okay, number one, phone the people who are specialized in that area. There is essentially a network across Canada of lawyers who specialize in impaired driving cases that are constantly talking to each other about impaired driving. If you phone someone who's like one of the, considered to be the top impaired driving lawyer in your area, they will take their time. They'll explain the technical issues to you. Nobody is going to say, I'm not going to give you my time or help you out. And if somebody does, just call me. I'll help you.
Okay.
Lawyers often call me and say, can you look at this impaired, or can you talk to me about these issues? And I will always make time for somebody to help them with that. And, usually I don't bill for it unless the client is paying them, So yeah, call somebody. And the other thing I think is stop attending any impaired driving related conferences in Canada. Not that they're not good, but when you go to a lecture at a criminal law conference that focuses on impaired driving law, you're going to get the information that is meant for the lowest common denominator, the people who don't know how to do an impaired, who need a basic explanation of the law. In the United States, there are two major organizations. One is better than the other. So the DUI Defense Lawyers Association and the National College for DUI Defense. The DUI Defense Lawyers Association has probably been the biggest resource that I've relied on to learn all of that knowledge. Not only do they have two major seminars every year with tons of scientific stuff, they also have experts come and present and explain these issues. There's tons of networking opportunities where you can actually speak to people who will talk to you about the science. They also sponsor a program at an actual lab where you can go and learn to operate all of the equipment that the police are using. So it gives you that extra edge. So I can't
that's actually very good advice, because I didn't know about that. And but that's a US association. So are there differences between US and Canadian laws when it comes to impaired driving?
The law is often very different, but the conferences that, especially that DUI-DLA puts on, are sort of a split between law and science. Okay. So you can skip the law sessions if it's jury selection, which is completely different in the US than it
Right.
is here. Won't help you with Canadian jury
Yeah.
selection, but they even, some of the things that are more US law based are still useful. They have lots of great seminars on cross-examination skills, how to properly make objections, hearsay, the opening statements, things like that, stuff that you can learn from.
Practical.
Your legal skills as well. So
Right. Okay. And are they expensive?
they're not cheap.
Yeah.
They're about $800 once
Okay.
you factor in the exchange rate. But I find that I get value out of every one of
Right.
them. And if you're working as a legal aid lawyer, or there's a public defender scholarships available, so you can also apply for scholarships. And most of the time, we don't get as many applicants as we have scholarships available, so you have a good chance of getting one.
Okay, so that's really good advice. Now, I wanted to ask you, Kyla, did you find it difficult to practice in this specific area, being a female criminal defense lawyer? And what are the challenges that you face?
Yes, I think, it's been harder for me than I think it would be for a male lawyer, because there are a lot of inherent biases just generally against women as lawyers. And the impaired driving area has, by and large, been dominated by male lawyers. Like, if you think of the top impaired driving lawyers in Canada, Mark Brayford, Tim Foster, Stephen Biss, Richard Aitken, where are the women? Shannon Gunn Emery is, is one of the ones to find, or Catherine Bayak. But, beyond those two, it's not powerhouse women that are dominating this area. And so, you kind of always feel like an outsider in the boys' club when you're trying to break into it. For me, though, when I'm a terrible person, because I just push my way into places that people don't want me and say, I'm here and you're going to have to accept me, which is what I've done with my area. I've just said, I've decided I'm going to be one of you. So welcome me or get used to me.
Well, but you're pretty good at establishing yourself in this area. And one thing that is also very interesting about you is how you've been using social media. You're very active on social media. And did that help build your practice? So maybe if you can tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, social media has been really good at building the practice, because I've made a lot of connections with just regular people. The people that get charged with driving offenses are not like the people who get charged with, the offenses that other people might be taking on. I mean, obviously, there's all sorts of situations that can lead to sort of your regular Joe getting charged with a criminal offense. But most of my clients don't have criminal records. They're not coming before the justice system. So when they get charged, they don't know who to call. They don't know a lawyer. Being on social media, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, being visible to the public means that when something happens, they know my name, they know my face, they know that I can help them and that I'm available and that they can give me a call or an email. I prefer an email.
And speaking of your social, so you said, just to confirm, if people want to find you, all the platforms that you're in, I know you're on Twitter. What else are you on? I think you mentioned TikTok.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram. I don't really Snapchat. I'm on LinkedIn, but who uses LinkedIn really? But
I think
Real. I'm on that.
On which one? Sorry.
Real. It's a very new social media app. But yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
nice.
all the major ones. Facebook. I'm on them all.
All right, and your name is Kyla Lee, right? On all your social media, or do you have a different?
Is not, but if you search Kyla Lee, I will come up. So on Twitter, I'm IRP lawyer. But if you search, should come up one of the first ones because it's a verified account. On TikTok, it's Kyla Lee lawyer. Instagram, Kyla Lee lawyer.
Okay, and so my final question for you, Kyla, is for someone who wants to get into this area of this niche, and they want to develop an area of practice like you have, and they don't know how to get into it. What advice do you have for someone who wants to start a practice focused on impaired driving?
Well, again, reach out to the people in your area who do specialize in that area. Ask if you can shadow a trial. If they say no, there's nothing that stops you from going and sitting in court.
Right.
So, check the court list, see if their name's on it on the trial list. And if they are, sit in the courtroom and watch them, learn from them, force them to accept you, which I know sounds a little bit crazy, but it works. And if you're in the Lower Mainland or in BC, give me a call, send me an email. I'll let you come watch my trials, and I'll, struggle with the performance anxiety of it all. But, just reach out to people. I have found my biggest tip for anybody ever is, if you want something, ask for it. People have a harder time saying no than finding a way to give you what you want. So if you're just annoying and ask for what you want, you usually get it.
That's really good advice. So you really have to go for what you want. And
yeah. And don't be discouraged if somebody tells you no. They're probably an a-hole. So just reach out to the next person. And I think that most of the people in this profession that I deal with, especially women, because as women we have to support other women, I think that most of the people in this profession that I deal with are genuinely interested in helping other people, because when we help others, we are actually helping their clients. And at the end of the day, you don't get into criminal defense unless you really truly want to help people.
That's true. Well, thank you so much, Kyla, for taking the time to do this, and good luck with everything that you're doing. And thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.